Hey all, here at OS Reviews. You're watching our video review of the CUBOT X18 Plus. This is a 6-inch phablet with an 18:9 aspect ratio that sells for about $160, making it very affordable but also competitive with the current crop of mid-tier Android phones that we've seen lately, including the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus or the Note 5, and it has a very similar overall dimension as well as feature set. With that being said, CUBOT manages to compete with some of these more well-known brand names by offering slightly better value in terms of hardware internals. Well, first of all, we have a full HD Plus display, which is fairly bright and vibrant. It's an IPS LCD panel with pretty good viewing angles overall, as well as sensitivity. It also has reasonable bezels, which are slightly smaller than on Xiaomi's offering, as you can see here, making the CUBOT as a whole look slightly more pleasing from the front. And we have 4 gigs of built-in RAM, 64 gigs of built-in storage, in addition to a Octa-Core processor clocked at 1.5 gigahertz by MediaTek. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you're getting a vanilla Android 8.0 Oreo experience right out of the box that has little to no bloatware, so you have only the essentials that you would want to use, including Chrome, off the Google utilities like the Play Store, and you have a Google Now inspired launcher where you can simply slide up to access all of your apps, which makes quite a lot of sense on a slightly taller phone like this. So again, there's a lot of value that CUBOT is trying to bring to the table for not too much money, but does it actually perform well? Well, let's take a closer look in this video. So let's start by taking a look at the design. So as aforementioned, on the front, the phone is pretty well crafted. It has, again, a pretty attractive looking modern look for 2018 smartphones. The top here also features a 13 megapixel camera for selfies, but there isn't a front-facing selfie flash, which you'll find on many competitors, and it was actually on the regular CUBOT X18 as well. So not really sure why they decided to get rid of that feature on the Plus version. There's also the earpiece, and on the side here, you will find access to the SIM card tray. It's a dual SIM card phone, so you can support 2 numbers at the same time. There is a standard 3.5mm headphone jack on the top, which is always nice to see. And on the other side, we have access to a pretty tactile volume rocker, a power switch. On the bottom, there is a micro USB port for charging. So unfortunately, it doesn't use USB Type-C, but at least, again, you do have that standard headphone jack. So that's a trade-off that you have to keep in mind. And on the back, there is that CUBOT logo, the fingerprint scanner, the camera lens, and the dual-tone LED flash. Something that you'll notice very quickly is the phone is made entirely out of plastic. It's polycarbonate. It reminds me a lot of something like the iPhone 3G or 3GS, and it's still fairly attractive. A lot of older Nokia Lumia phones also use the same type of material, but it does attract a fair amount of fingerprints. It's not quite as premium feeling as glass or aluminum. It has a 4,000 milliamp hour capacity battery pack, which seems to be quite impressive, at least in our testing so far, but it's not going to be quite as long-lasting as the competing Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus, just because this one uses a Snapdragon 625 chipset, which is renowned for its power efficiency, whereas this one will probably last you for about 2 days, even 3 days on a single charge. This one will probably get you through 1.5 days, maybe 2 days of moderate use before you need to recharge it, so it doesn't last quite as long, but it's still more than sufficient. Moving back to the software, let's take a quick look at how fast the fingerprint scanner takes to unlock. You can see that it's actually very quick with the phone's display turned on, but even when the phone's display is off, it just takes a split second for it to register, and it's actually very sensitive and accurate in our testing so far. It's not quite as quick as on a flagship or on some of Xiaomi's phones, but nonetheless it is more than usable. Moving on to the camera quality next, the interface here is quite simple, and it's the same design that we've been seeing from many of these Chinese phones, whether it's by CUBOT or Bluebo and some of these other comparable brands of late. It's inspired in a way by iOS with how the menus are laid out, but it's functional and it gives you quite a few settings to play around with. Now, it starts off just with the regular mode where it can capture an image just by tapping on the shutter key. This is the blur mode or the bokeh mode, and as aforementioned, it doesn't work completely well, just because it has a tendency just to make a circle where everything in the circle is in focus and everything outside is simply out of focus, as you've seen already many times on our previous videos. In time for some sample images captured in outdoor environments, you can tell that, again, colors are pretty well saturated. They're also fairly accurate looking, so as long as you have a good amount of lighting, it actually does a good job in terms of capturing nice looking shots that are usable for social media, usable for uploading to a computer, for saving, for things like that. And again, a pretty nice vibrant display as well that you can use to interact with your photos. Overall, getting past the fact that the second lens, the 2 megapixel bokeh lens, is not nearly as good as what you'd expect, the primary one actually works really well in terms of giving you details as well as overall pretty accurate looking shots. So again, a pretty decent camera experience, especially on the primary camera built onto this phone. So the virtual keys on the bottom here, as you can tell, can be fully hidden. Also in the menus, you can reprogram them so you can change the ordering of what keys you want displayed on the left and the right. If you want the multitasking key to be switched with the back key, you can actually do that in the settings, so it gives you quite a few customizations on what you want to do. We have access to all the standard Google shortcuts, including holding down on the home key to access Assistant, which is the Google Smart AI that you can use to set up reminders, as well as quickly pull up searches if you don't want to type something out. With 4 gigs of built-in RAM, it's more than sufficient to handle even 20 apps open at the same time without really any slowing down or stuttering. So it does a pretty good job as far as day-to-day use without really having to manage your RAM too specifically, because there's quite a lot that you get at again, pretty low price point. When it comes to the call quality, the CUBOT X18 performed fairly well when I tested it out with T-Mobile here in the Seattle region. The microphone is on the slightly warmer side, but as a whole, callers said they didn't have any issues in terms of hearing me, even when I was trying it outdoors and in windy conditions. Keeping in line with the entire stock feel of the phone, we also have a very stock keyboard from Google, which is nice to see. Keys are large, they're responsive and easy to use, and you can see the browser has no problems at all handling complex pages like the full desktop site of the New York Times, which is a great benchmark as a very complex page. Lots of these ads, lots of these dynamic, moving, scrolling elements, which are a nightmare for lower powered phones usually to render, but on here it poses no real issue. In terms of raw processing power, I will say that the Octa-Core chip on here, 1.5 gigahertz, is more of a mid-tier chipset from MediaTek. It's not quite as fast as the latest Snapdragon 600 series chipsets, especially the 630s or 660s. But in terms of day-to-day use, such as watching videos and browsing the web, you'll hardly notice that difference just because everything still loads up at a really quick pace, and you can see that text will reflow itself if you're zooming in, and there's no real stuttering or delays. So not a powerhouse if you're looking for, let's say, the best in terms of gaming, best in terms of 3D graphics, but for regular use, it actually does a sufficiently good job. Now a test of the speaker quality and YouTube video playback experience. Alright, so minimizing the sound there, the takeaway is this speaker quality on the X18 Plus is good, but it's not outstanding. It's definitely not one of the best speakers I've heard from a smartphone, just because it's a mono speaker on the side. It can get covered up a little bit easily, and it doesn't pack too much bass in terms of depth, but it does have a good amount of volume if you turn it all the way up, so it fills up smaller spaces for sharing, let's say, a quick song with friends and family without any problems. But for the best experience, you would probably want to use the headphone jack, which is again a nice addition here, or you could use Bluetooth for connecting to a wireless pair of accessories. Video playback though is very good just because again you have this very sharp display, 1080p plus, which offers plenty of saturation and detail, and you can also zoom in using this gesture like on most 18:9 or 2:1 aspect ratio phones for enjoying content in this widescreen, full screen view. We see that indeed we have Android 8.0 Oreo right out of the box, so having this very up-to-date version of Android will definitely be helpful in terms of getting the latest security patches, as well as being able to support all of the latest games and titles that you'd possibly want to download from the Play Store without any problems at all. And again, it will keep the phone up to date for a little longer than on many, let's say, NuGet-powered alternatives, which are still more common right now through exporters like GearBest or even on Amazon. So if you want the one of the newer experiences, and the CUBOT X18 Plus definitely delivers that in terms of having the software, which is very much stock and fairly up to date. You can even program the fingerprint scanner to act as a gesture control for long pressing to go back to the home screen, tapping once to play pause your music. So there's a few different customization features that CUBOT has also built on in. As a whole, this is a very consistent and well-performing phone for the money. The biggest problem is this is a space that's getting occupied by more and more competitors. The Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus, in my opinion, still slightly edges the CUBOT X18 out in terms of having a slightly faster overall experience in terms of the fingerprint scanner, in terms of, let's say, playing back games and titles, things like that. But the CUBOT X18 Plus is definitely not far behind, and definitely a more stock experience, which will please many out there, and it should, in addition to having a slightly better design on the front in terms of smaller bezels and looking more like a flagship level phone. So if you're interested in all those attributes and you're not too concerned about getting a phone from a slightly lesser known manufacturer, then I think that the CUBOT X18 Plus is definitely something that's worth considering. So you can check out more details in our upcoming article, but for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. This has been our review of the CUBOT X18 Plus budget Android 8.0 phablet.